Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why, even though we're 7 minutes late. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I'm joined, as always, by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett, and Joe, Iowa Joe, waiting in the chat so patiently. It's my fault. It's always my fault. I'll take responsibility.
It's not your fault, Don. We were both talking beforehand. We had some catching up to do because with doing the every other week schedule we're on right now, I just miss you so much. I'm so happy to have this chance to be with you, Don. I'm so grateful for that. I'm happy to see you, friend.
So happy to see you, friend. And it's hard. It's hard. I'm glad we have a little bit of at least we have every other week right now, because if not that, I would just be lost.
Yeah, me too. I'll be wandering around my neighborhood, just going, somebody talk to me about football, please.
Yeah, I'm the only one who'll talk to you about football when the season is like in April or May. Can you believe it's March? I just said April, May, but I meant March. Can you believe it's March?
I cannot. That is crazy, actually, to me, because, January and February they just suck. And so getting through them when you're like, we're finally past like the bleak, awful, cold months. Like, this is wonderful. And it hits me by surprise every single time. Side note, thanks, Joe, for being here. Thank you, True North Packers fan. True North is asking us, what are each of your 40-yard dash times? I'm not fast anymore. I'm a slightly chunky, 47-year-old man. So I wouldn't be great. Wouldn't be great, man. They were talking on the Wednesday Pack a Day recently about like what they think their 40 times would be. And I think Sarah Keller had put out like 7 point something initially. And the guys were like, no, it'd be a lot less than that. Mine would probably be 7 something. Probably.
Right.
If not, more. So it wouldn't be good.
I was a pretty fast sprinter in my day. And it's funny, True North, that you asked that question, because we want to know what yours is, of course, too. So, because, you ask, you got to answer. But I was recently thinking, because I'm still like recovering from the surgery and stuff, and it's like, maybe I could just do like a little mile. Like if I just do a mile run a day, like that's not very far. And I could work on my speed, because when you work on your speed, you get stronger, faster. I'm barely walking a mile right now. Just like it's been a lot, but I am thinking a lot about being fast. So it's funny that you should ask, because pretty soon I'm going to time myself and I'm going to let you know.
There we go.
I'm not going to be very fast. Maybe I'll do that
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, when it's cold out, I'm much less likely to like go on walks around the neighborhood with my kid. But this last week, almost every day she's saying, want to go for a scoot. And so she gets her scooter. And when I walk with her, she's getting fast too, which is really cool to see. And so I'm actually getting out and moving a bit more than I have for the last couple of months, which has been really nice.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I was thinking about a scooter. I bought a motorcycle, not a motorcycle, but
I was picturing like with a leather jacket and stuff.
No. I bought, what was it? It was like a, what do they call it? It was like a Vespa, but had a little bit bigger wheels, but it was electric. It was solar. I was having my friend who does solar do solar for me. That was my whole big plan. And this was probably like 15 years ago, but and I took the thing out, and California, you have to take your life insurance, not on the highway, of course, but so it's small enough wheels that you take it in the bike lane. I got a helmet and all this. And it's just when I was doing like a part-time gig in graphic design, and it was like maybe 5 miles away. And I'm like, why didn't I just kind of get a Vespa, and do that instead of driving? Because I'm not going to walk 5 miles to work and back. I mean, I could have, but It's not like a pleasant walk. Anyway, scared the crap out of me. People get hit on bikes all the time in the bike lane here, and it's just really scary. But it's something I was just thinking about. I was like, when I'm really old, because I literally to my friend's house, who's a neighbor, basically, and maybe a third of a mile today to drop something off. And I'm like, well, what if I'm really old and I can't walk? I could get a scooter and just scoot over there. It's been on my mind. You're reading my mind. This is scaring me, True North.
Yep.
Yeah. Been thinking about this. 4.29 seconds. That's great. That's great. I think I was maybe 5 seconds in grade school, like the last time I did a 40, because 40-yard dash is something I did in grade school. That's the last time I remember doing a 40-yard dash.
It's been a while.
So I named our show tonight Combine and Stir. Kind of a play on Combine and thinking about the whole season in the NFL being like baking a cake. Right? So,
I'm listening. Go for it.
I'm going to try. I'm going to hopefully you'll help me with this, but I'm going to try throughout the entirety of the season to equate where we are in terms of the NFL season and off season as far as baking a cake. And of course, the Super Bowl will be the cake is baked, right?
Okay. All right.
Right. So we're starting over now with the new cake.
I like cake, so keep going.
Yeah. And so for the last couple episodes, really the whole last month, it's like, well, we're really not into football too much because there's not that much going on. But at least now we've had the combine and of course the draft, a free agency is going to be pretty soon in the draft. So yeah, so I'm kind of thinking of that as the metaphor. And I'd like to get really like, maybe it's going to be a super complicated cake, not just like a vanilla cake mix thing, right? It's going to be something. So I think before next episode, I'll pick a very complicated cake, probably from a French restaurant that we can bake as a metaphor. Wait, stop. What kind of cake? That's next week or in 2 weeks when we're back.
And Dawn, I think that taking your cake metaphor and running with it for a second here, or at least, trying to jog quickly, like what a 40-yard dash would look like for me. That's one of the great things about fandom with, in this case, football, is that you can build what kind of cake you want to, and that's fine. If you want to build a really involved cake and have your binders full of draft guys and stuff like that and have all your spreadsheets and really get into it, you could make a really, in-depth complicated cake. Or I think for the draft, I tend to be much more like a chocolate chip vanilla with kind of a vaguely developed frosting. I'll get into it a little bit, but I'm not like hardcore.
Right.
And that's okay. We can all kind of make the cake we want to. And some people will make like the really, really in-depth, first tier when they get into like the draft stuff, get really into it. Maybe the rest of it is just a little bit fluffier, a little bit like less intense. So.
Right. Or multi-layered cake. We could go into yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we can build the cake we want to, and that's cool. Huh.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking of like a lemon, lavender, and maybe about the icing. It's going to be icing, not frosting, but we'll see. And I think if I do a layer cake, it'll have different levels, will have different icings, right? So as you dig into it, it's going to be
Oh, a cake.
Wait, stop. What kind of cake? So that's what kind of cake. Who knows? We're going to develop it over the next week. Right. So have you guys in the chat, and of course, Matt, I mean, I haven't asked you how your week has. How has your week been, Maddie?
Oh, incidental. It's fine. Whatever. There's nothing industry report where, I mean, everything's just kind of like coasting along. I mean, I guess I would say though, and this might be where you're gonna go. So if it was, I don't mean to step on you're kind of where you're going with that, Dawn. But just to say that it is a weird time of the cycle of the NFL year, because I think more so than usual, once the season was over, and even before the season was over, I definitely was just like, like kind of unplugged from it, to the point that like, we were talking about like, am I even going to watch Super Bowl? Of course I watched the Super Bowl, but it wasn't like I was super invested. It was just like more of the social aspect of watching with my family.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I felt kind of disconnected, and I haven't been on like social media as much. I've been doing like other stuff, and that's been cool. But I do feel like, that's just kind of where we're at. And I'm still listening to football podcasts. I'm still like consuming the same sorts of stuff, but just barely have even the vaguest sense of like who is going to be, the top picks in the draft. Like even the first round, that's sort of like, your entry level based knowledge. I'm just starting to like get a handle on that barely. Like that's where I'm at with, with all of this right now. How about you? Where are you at with your involvement with football?
Pretty similar. I did click on some combine content and some free agency stuff and looked some things up. Haven't retained a thing, so I can't recite what it was. But I'm interested, and I'm starting to feel it. Now, we'll tell you one thing that got me a little aflutter, and that was the rumor I heard about the Packers game being in Dublin this season, this year.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoo. And I think that caught me. That was the little nudge I needed to sort of be like, okay, I'm going to start consuming some content. So, but it's only been the last couple days. Right. So, and that's okay. If you're a fan who, is tuned out right now, that's fine. I mean, wherever we are, it's totally fine. But I really got excited about that. And of course, I thought about Jair, and I'm not sure if you heard that rumor. I heard it on Rich Eisen. I'm not sure if that's where you heard it or if you heard it at all.
It's been circulating a bit. Yeah. Dara. I've been thinking about him too with that. I'm hoping that does happen and he does get to see the Packers in his own country. That'd be awesome.
It'd be really great. And I was like fantasizing about seeing a Packers game in Dublin myself, which is like, that's really crazy. That's a lot because I have so many things on my plate this year. So
Right.
And okay, so Iowa Joe says a bear cake would have to likely be a nasty coconut cake that has been baked way too long, so it's completely dried out and has a plaster of Paris as the icing. I like coconut. Okay, I'm not really a coconut cake thing, but I would not but I would not turn down a coconut cake. But I would turn down that cake the way you described it. And if they said it was a bear's cake, of course I would have to turn it down. But I like that description. I like that. See, this metaphor works.
Yeah, and if I can read True North's answer to this too, they're saying Cowboys cake looks good until December, then it falls flat and leaves a bad taste. Yes, there it is. Nice. Love it, guys.
Those Cowboys, I think they're going to try and do something, one last shot, like actually do something, because they didn't do anything last year. I mean, they got beat by the Packers so badly in the playoff game where they thought they were going to win. And that was the end of them for the whole season. Like the preseason last year, they didn't show up. But it sounds like and I'm not sure where I heard that rumor, probably one of the same places. So, but I'm not expecting much really from the Cowboys. You never know. It's the NFL, as they like to say. I forgot I had a thought and now it's like totally gone from my head, but I think that also came from Rich Eisen. The way that I got the Packers rumor, the Dublin Packers rumor, was on Rich Eisen, and that was what he did. Like, this is the funny thing. He did like 5 of what I heard, like 5 pieces of gossip. I can't remember what it was that I picked up from the combine, because he had just come back from that. And I'm like, oh, I want to know what's going on with the combine, because I've been so checked out. And it had not any of the rumors. They had nothing to do with the combine, which I thought was delightful. And that's where I picked up the Dublin thing with the Packers, which he may end up calling, which I think would be great. And the staff was really excited about that. But of course, it's not official. And then I think that's where I picked up that the Cowboys are really going to go for it this year. Like Jerry Jones really wants this. And of course, he's 6,000 years old. Of course he wants it before he dies.
There's just few seconds left for that guy, basically. That is a fascinating thing about the combine, is that they're there to do the business of getting the measurables and like the the medicals and whatever else. But it really is like all these people come together and starting to like broker deals, low key, because they technically can't yet, not quite yet. And the gossip and information and the networking and kind of like the stuff you hear from the combine is more of that, I think, even at this point, than all the like official combine business. And I love that. I love that how like there's like little bits of news that kind of little bits of gossip and stuff. I love that.
Yeah, I wasn't disappointed. I definitely did not turn it off. I wasn't like, oh, I need to know what happened at the combine. I'm like, I don't care. Like it really, as we know, until our GM picks who they pick and everyone else is in the other 31 teams, GMs pick who they pick and we start playing and practicing and playing, we don't know anything. So yeah.
That's right.
Oh, another cake. We're liking this cake thing. The chat likes the cake. Vikings cake would have to be just a cupcake.
Because they have never won the big one. That is good.
Okay.
Good
okay. I just saw Beverly Lawyer, the Lions fan, in another chat that I was in, on a friend's chat on YouTube. So what would a Lions cake be comprised? What kind of cake would the Lions cake be? Because if the Vikings are a cupcake, the Lions are like a mini muffin, right? They're not even a mini muffin.
God.
A kind of a vanilla mini muffin, because they have done, in terms of postseason, not a whole lot in 50 years, something like that.
It's been a while.
But yeah, I know. I still have that in me. Someone, that was my thought. I forgot. Okay. And it tied into something you said, but now I can't remember what it was, but I'll just share it really quick before we transition to our superlatives. I thought it was really funny. Someone posted on Blue Sky. Okay, I got to read it now because I'll forget. Basically, something to the effect of, it was 21 days ago when the Eagles beat the, what's their name? Oh, the Chiefs. That's right. I forgot their name already. The Eagles beat the Chiefs at the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. And I was like, this still makes me happy. I was like, oh my God. So I recirculated that post. And then he comes back and he's like, do you remember? Oh, no, he said, do you remember when? And then he said, do you remember when the Eagles beat the Packers? He was an Eagles fan, probably. Do you remember when the Eagles beat the Packers both time last season? I was like, well, that's a spoiled sport kind of thing. I just retweeted you. So I thought it was funny. But I was like, yeah, I remember. They were a better team. It's okay. Yeah, we didn't do what we thought we should do this year. And hopefully this next season is going to be better. Okay. And True North says, Lions are just a picture of a cake. Yes, like in one of those fancy cooking books, right? But not real. Looks good, but not real.
Looks good, but not real.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Oh, the hollow cake. What do they call those cakes with the hole?
Like a surprise cake?
Yeah. Awesome. And Iowa Joe says something that looks amazing but has no substance. What are those called? They have a special cake pan?
I don't know.
Oh my God, it'll come to me. I'll blurt it out in our next segment.
I bet you will.
It's a cake with a hole in it. You guys know what I mean. You'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Somebody will figure it out.
It will be figured out.
The cake with the hole. It's like a bundt cake. And my mother used to use it for pineapple upside down cake. And who the heck? Okay, so that's what I would say, Lions. Pineapple upside down cake. The cake that no one eats. It's like so awful. Have you had pineapple upside down?
I like it. My mom used to make it when I was little. So yeah, I mean, there's like the nostalgia involved with it, sure.
It is.
But it's
like fruit cake. It's fruit cake. Like fruit cake.
Yeah. There was always like a lot of, I don't know if it was like syrup or honey or what, but like it's something treacly, in the cake itself. So it's kind of moist and sweet and really sugary. I don't know.
Yeah, very, very, very sugary. I think my grandmother might have used maple syrup. I'm not sure, but
sounds about right. Yeah.
My grandmother, she was fun. She also used to make, it was like fruit cake, but she would use gumdrops. She made gumdrop cake.
What? That's psychotic.
She was totally psychotic. That's funny. Great descriptor for my grandmother. Poor thing. Oh God.
Angel
Okay.
food. That's
Angel
fairly insubstantial cake. Yeah, that's a pretty good joke.
Yeah.
Fruit cake,
Okay.
True North. Yeah.
The lions are a donut. Everyone loves a donut, but it's just not the same as a Coke.
Same as cake. Yep. Good. You guys are killing it over here with these cake analogies. I love it.
It's working. It's working. Glad you like it. Well, Maddie,
Is it time?
so
Time
it's
to.
that time. Are you ready?
I'm stealing myself. I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Sorry, I'm not ready. Oh my God. It's time for this week's superlatives. Maddie, do you think it's time for this week's superlatives?
I think it's time for this week's superlatives. Yes, I do think so. I do think
so. And we're going to volley because I thought when you
Yes.
said, Matt, you wanted to talk to me before the show, I thought that was what we were going to talk about. And then we didn't.
One of these days we'll actually do that. But no, volley definitely.
All right, I'll start.
You start.
It's getting drafty in here. Most drafty. Most drafty goes to Aaron Nagler and Tyler Brook for the latest installment of the Draft Industrial Complex. Aaron Nagler and Tyler Brook. Sorry, I lost my page. Okay, discuss prospects who impressed during the NFL Combine and watching the workouts. So I gravitated toward this because of what you said. I was kind of like, in it, not in it. I certainly wasn't waiting with bated breath on what the results from the Combine were. By the way, last year, I remember Matt LaFleur saying he wasn't going to attend the Combine. I know some coaches do. Do you know if Matt LaFleur attended? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know that I've heard that fewer and fewer coaches do every year. I've heard that, but I don't know about this year.
Yeah, it's getting so weird. And they brought up some really great points in this presentation, and this I watched on YouTube. It's probably a podcast as well. But yeah, so Cheesehead TV is doing a sub-segment show called The Draft Industrial Complex, and it's great. I think you brought this up. Didn't you bring this up a couple weeks ago? I can't remember, but it seemed familiar.
I did not, but they're doing great work with that. I will confirm. Absolutely.
For sure. So I did watch the one installment, and you don't even have to click for it. You just go to the Cheesehead TV, at least on YouTube, and it's like their featured video. So you just don't even have to click anything. It just starts playing for you. And it's really great. And I picked up some interesting things. Kind of was a little surprised about some of the things they said, but as is the case with you, Matt, I'm just warming up to the idea of what the Packers' needs are and who are they going to draft. Of course, I'll get crazy about the draft. We'll do our mock draft, and that'll be fun with all of our fun mock draft people. But right now, it's just like I'm just sort of dipping my toes in, and it's been fun. It's been fun, and I'm not less interested than last year. Actually, last year I think I lagged even more, to be honest. I think I did. So, but I loved that. And so Cheesehead TV has a YouTube, of course, they have their own website and they have a podcast. So, and Tyler Brook is fantastic. I never got to see his face. So it was nice on YouTube because I got to see the person with the face. Whereas with podcasts, you just hear the voice, which can be fun too. And I'm just going to do like a subcategory superlative for that same one. And it's noisest graphics. Shout out to the graphics and intro designer for Draft Industrial Complex at Cheesehead TV. Yay!
Could be Tyler Herrick. Wouldn't be surprised.
I wasn't sure if it was Tyler or my brain just froze.
Or someone else.
My brain just froze.
We'll have to check Tyler and see.
Probably Tyler. It was very nice. Yes.
I was saying they're doing great work with that series because Tyler Brook really knows his stuff. I mean, he's amazing. And I like that Aaron Nagler's involved because he, is somebody who has used that phrase, the draft industrial complex, somewhat. I don't know if disparagingly is too strong a word, but to have somebody who has a healthy bit of skepticism about what this whole process is at this part of the year, I like that that's part of the conversation and the tone they bring to it. So
Mhm.
they're doing great work with that, definitely.
And I think that's why I gravitated toward it, because I remember last year there being some like I'm picking up on this is becoming less and less important. The draft, excuse me, the combine,
Mm-hmm.
and it's becoming a show inside of a show. One of the points that they brought up, and I want y'all to listen to it yourself. I'm not going to give anything a lot away, but one of the things they did talk about was, and I heard about this last year on some other show podcasts about how the players will give like they have to give a lot of measurements, like their
Mm-hmm.
body measurements, their weights, that kind of thing, and all the discrepancies between their last measurements, say at whatever the last event was,
Mm-hmm.
and what they were showing up saying they were in at the combine. And I remember picking up on that vibe last year and thinking, well, this is just not good. This is just not even for real then, right? And they were talking, oh, sure, somebody can lose or gain weight.
Sure.
And they might lose a lot of weight to run faster because that's a
Mm-hmm.
combine thing. But how would their hand size get bigger? Or how
Mm-hmm.
would their what was another measurement? They said that it's just like impossible. Actually, hand size, Tyler was saying, well, they can do exercises to make their hand size bigger, but they can't make like their fingers like super long. Like they
Mm-hmm.
can only change so much. And I guess there was even more of that. It's just like the rough stuff last year. It's just more of it, right? And so the skepticism is there. Hopefully, I'm sure the Packers scouts know what's up with that and know how to sift through all of that, because they can factor all that in because they're meeting with these people one-on-one. They're taking their own measurements, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was an interesting subtopic. That was by no means the whole podcast, but that was just like, that did come up because you mentioned it. I thought I would also. Yeah. So what do you have for your first superlative?
The first one is going to be best analysis. So if there's one thing you can rely on, right, it's that acmepackingcompany.com is going to have something good every day that you can check out. And this isn't this. I'm going to go apart from my superlative for a second. So, in talking about how to dip toes into the draft stuff, finding like the sources that are like, here are a couple of names. That's like what I need right now. Like the last week or last time I talked about the draft fellows doing their collaboration with Packaday with the On the Clock series they're doing with just like one team at a time, going through like the order they'll be in the draft. And, the great work that Kyle Fellows and Andrew Murtick are doing with that, like that kind of approach, just here's a little bite-sized bit. So Justice Mosquito was writing like a daily like report from the combine from that day, and it was like a good amount of information, not too much, but also you could go back to it and kind of refer to it, like, oh, I remember hearing that player's name in the thing Justice wrote, and kind of going back to it. So just it's kind of like I'm doing a big shout out to Acme Packing Company for a second, but the one I actually want to talk about, best analysis. This was an article that Archon 14 wrote. It was the Packers scheme fit and roster construction was the name of it. It's a couple of days ago, I think he wrote this. And I liked it because he was going off of like one thing that Gutekunst said in his press conference about I forget which position now exactly what we're talking about, but suffice to say, just kind of going off of one thing he said, like, how does this actually, like, how true is this what he's saying compared to like what they've done in the past, but also in light of the fact that the kind of stuff that Jeff Hafley might want to do is going to be, a lot of ways different than what they currently have, and they're trying to like move the players into the direction of what Hafley wants. So basically, I liked it how like Archon took this one little thing and spun it entirely an entirely fully fleshed out, interesting article that involved analysis and looking at past tendencies and a lot of other things taking into it. It was just like cool how you could spin one little thing into this whole article. So, and it was great writing. Archon's one of those guys out there who, like, first of all, who knows what his real name is? Who knows?
Right. I was going to ask, do you know?
Yeah. Archon 14, and they refer to him on all the different, podcasts that are affiliated with that. The Title Town. What are they called? Tundra Town Frequencies. Title Town Frequencies. Ooh, can't think of it. But so they'll talk about Archon all the time. Who is this guy? I don't know. He's a mystery, but he's a good writer and he's a good analyst. And this was a fun article to read.
It's kind of like R2D2. We just love him.
Kind of, I guess. He might be an android for all I know. He's Archon.
He's Archon. He's a robot. Hey, anything's possible right now with AI and whatnot. Okay.
What's your next one, Don?
So, as you know, I sort of am obsessed with watching trials and legal stuff. So here's one. I can't remember. Tell me if I mentioned this already. I discovered on some podcasts a term called astroturfing. Do you know what that is? I think it's great because it's NFL-ish.
Yeah, I don't think you've talked about this. I don't think so.
Okay. So, astroturfing is the deceptive practice of presenting an orchestrated marketing or public relations campaign in the guise of unsolicited comments from the members of the public. So, speaking of AI helps with this. And so, if somebody wants to campaign against a player or bring a team down or bring anyone down in or out of the NFL, they can hire a PR firm or just on their own figure out how to do this thing called astroturfing, which I think is fascinating because of astroturf being something in the NFL that's used playing football. It's not real. It's not real grass, right? And so that's where it came from. But the reason I kind of came across it is because I'm never interested in what's going on in Hollywood, except right now there is this squabble going on, and it's in the courts between two Hollywood notables. One is Blake Lively, and one is Justin Baldoni, and of course Blake Lively has been for the last 10 years. What's her name? Oh, Taylor Swift's best friend, but she's not anymore. Which I don't care about. But this all came up because Blake Lively was actually accusing in court filings Justin Baldoni of astroturfing, but in reality, it looks like Blake Lively and her PR firm was actually using the astroturf. So it's like, what is real anymore, right? So astroturfing is a thing. And so having said that, that's kind of like a side thing because I meant to mention that in my what I'm up to this week because actually in the last couple of weeks because I was really watching a lot of that, consuming a lot of that content. I'm trying to consume legal content from actual lawyers who are evaluating the legal papers and that kind of thing. I'm not getting into all the crazies, but it's for some reason it's got my interest, and this whole astroturfing just kind of like it's kind of interesting that term is being used, having nothing to do with football, but then it kind of brings to mind some of the complaints about football teams that don't even have grass. They're using astroturfing anyway. So having said all that was just like a side note, and I'm sorry this might be a little clumsy, but most common denominator goes to New York Times because both John Gruden versus the NFL and this Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni and Baldoni versus the New York Times have this common denominator, and it's the New York Times. And the New York Times is being accused of basically putting out some false stories, and it's eye-opening. It's important to know that everything you read, even if you're reading a source that at one time was reputable, it might not be anymore. And knowing what's real and not being too gullible right now is super important. But just a quick update on the complicated story of John Gruden versus basically Roger Goodell, but the NFL. He did lose. He brought up his complaint to the Supreme Court. I know I talked about it last year. They've denied it. They basically ruled against him, but they've granted a stay in his lawsuit against the NFL. Basically, the fight there is that John Gruden wants a trial. The NFL is like, no, you've signed something, and everybody who's involved in the NFL have signed this thing saying you agree to arbitration. But the problem here And you would think the Nevada Supreme Court would recognize it, and some of the Supreme justices did, but not all of them, not enough of them, is that John Gruden would be, Roger Goodell would be the one who's kind of like in charge of that mediation. And he's the one who's involved.
What?
Yeah, he's the one who's really, that John Gruden thinks was part and parcel to the whole leaking of his emails that led to him being forced out as a head coach. So I just think it's really juicy and really great, and I'm still watching it.
It is juicy. I agree. Yes.
It is. It's complicated too. So let me just read a summary from NFL.com. Right?
Right.
The panel decided the league could move the civil court into arbitration that might be overseen by a defendant, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. 2 justices said Gruden knew when he signed a contract with the Raiders that the NFL used arbitration to resolve disputes.
Mm-hmm.
But the dissenting justice said, and that's the person who says, no, I don't think that this should be granted. He said it would be outrageous for Goodell to arbitrate in a dispute in which he is a named defendant.
I mean,
so you think,
right?
you think, but there you go with the old Supreme Court crap. And this is not federal yet, at least yet. It's the Nevada State Supreme Court, but I'm still keeping an eye on that. Wanted to update because I do like to finish things, right? And this is going to go on even longer, considering where it's at. And I think there was some astroturfing going on there too. He's not contending that. John Gruden is not contending that, but I do. Astroturfing is something that's being used commonly now by law firms. They're hiring PR because they're wanting to get to the jury pool and public opinion before the court, before the trial, or whether it's civil or not civil even happens. So it's just kind of interesting. And that's the common denominator, is that it was the New York Times in both the Baldoni versus Blake Lively and the Gruden situation that shared the story on their platform, let's just say. And they are shielded by all kinds of laws that protect them because, hey, that's what they do. They have all kinds of protections. They can say anything they want about people because it's just opinion. So it's interesting. It's hairy. And that most common denominator is New York Times, which I have banned at this point. So
I love what True North Packers fans threw in the chat here. Is the trial sponsored by DraftKings or ESPN Bet?
Oops.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's right. That's right. So, what is your next superlative, man? I know that was a lot. Little things tend to be a lot.
It's good stuff. So, they do tend to be, but it's good to talk about those because I feel like most football fans aren't paying attention to that at all. So it's good to be, get the updates from you on that. I love that. My next one is best conversation. Don, this was so good. So, I always speak very highly of Robert Mays, who is the host of the Athletic Football Show. That's always, I always feel like I'm missing a word. No, that's what it is. Athletic Football Show.
Right.
And one of the things that he's doing right now is he's getting ready for like big time reporting about free agency starting next week. So in fact, on Monday, they're going to be going live for like 5 hours with like guests coming in and stuff like that. So gearing up to that, he's been doing some conversations with some of the beat writers for teams that he thinks are like on the cusp. So in, I think yesterday's episode, he had Matt Schneiderman on to talk. Of course, we love Schneiderman, Packers beat reporter for The Athletic. And so they had a discussion, the two of them, about what he thinks, like what Matt Schneiderman thinks the Packers need to like get over the hump and actually, get to a Super Bowl. And so hearing, that conversation between, Robert Mays, who has his sort of focus, league wide, and Matt Schneiderman, who can be like hyper focused on the Packers as a beat reporter. Hearing that conversation of these two really great thinkers, great writers, great analysts was really fun. It was a good like 20 minutes, I think, at the end of the episode that I'd highly recommend that Packers fans check out. It was very good.
I was trying to get
Ooh.
that in. I'm glad you caught it because I wanted to. And I know it's going to be a good show. So I'm really glad. Best conversation, Matt Schneiderman and Robert Mays. Yeah. And it sort of made me think about Schneidman, and he's so fun. And LaFleur, they had that show during the season. His however many
once a month, I think, during the season, right?
Yeah, something like that. So
that's a good show.
I didn't catch any of them.
Oh, they're really great. Yeah, it was once a month, so it was like 4.
I was like, I'm going to play those now because I can, because there's time. Because there's not like, yeah. So that was the other thing that it reminded me of. I love that. Best conversation. That's very good.
Yeah. So you have one more?
I actually have one more.
There you go.
I used the word banned in the last one, but this has nothing to do with the last superlative. This is most banned, and it goes to Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker. Yeah. So I'm just going to say that it came out finally this last week, just over the last 4 or 5 days, that the Ravens have finally stepped up and said, yeah, this is concerning. And these go to allegations about Justin Tucker doing the kinds of things that I just forgot his name. The quarterback who's for the Browns did.
Oh, talking about
Deshaun Watson. And I went over that in kind of detail, gory detail last year. So basically the same exact type of behavior that he's being accused of. And so there was a really good podcast by the Baltimore Banner. And it was called Everything We Know About the Justin Tucker Allegations. And they came out because the Ravens came out and finally said something. Because, you know, I sometimes criticize it that teams aren't coming out and saying things, but because they want the legal process to move forward first. And they really should, because they could be sued for the kinds of things that I was just talking about, because they're not protected like the New York Times is protected.
Yeah.
They're not protected like the NFL's protected. They don't have that wall of protection. So you do want to be very careful about what you say about people. But I listened to this in great detail, and because it's a legal matter, and they are concerned, and I'm concerned, and it sounds very, very, very much like Deshaun Watson, who's been, of course, just, you know, not done well since that all came out. And of course, we're not immune to that, because we have now a kicker who had some accusations about him.
Yeah.
And the difference is the kicker that we have for the Packers has apologized for his behavior. He has come clean. He's been remorseful. And that, to me personally, I don't know about you, Matt, but it makes a difference. I'm watching a trial right now where a guy came on, and he was on for like 3 days. He's the star witness for the prosecution, and he was part of a conspiracy to murder someone. And no one else has taken responsibility. And he was not even the biggest part of this conspiracy. He is crying. He is remorseful. He is sorry. He feels like crap about what he did. You can see he's telling the truth. He's there for the prosecution, even though he's in jail, possibly for prison for life. And he's doing his mea culpa. So there is a difference. I would like to think that that's what's going on with our kicker, but it's just something I watch for sure. And with Justin Tucker, it's just kind of interesting. One of the things, because I don't know if you remember this during the most recent season, where Justin Tucker, who was always a clutch kicker and won games for the Ravens, he had a really bad period. Like
a rough year.
He was losing games, and he was going up there. And of course, he pulled it together toward the end. And then Deshaun Watson too. It's like fell apart. And you just, and I'm not saying karma, that's not my thing, but it's like, this is getting to these guys, right? It's because Deshaun Watson, by all accounts, was a great quarterback. Why is this happening? What other thing is it? You know, it's just kind of funny how things tend to work out in the end. But yeah, so eyes on Justin Tucker. He's probably going to retire. If he were smart, he'd retire at this point.
Well,
my
seriously.
opinion. But yeah, so but they did come out, And for the first time, the team has finally spoken, and good for them.
Good.
I
Yeah.
applaud
For
them.
real.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. Most banned. He's
Most
gonna be
banned.
banned. Okay, Maddie, and you have one final
I do
flipper.
have one more. Okay, so of course, we've been talking, throughout the show today about how the content's a bit slower. There's not much stuff coming out. It's harder to be engaged with it because a lot of people are doing a lot of great work still. Like, not to say anything about that,
Oh yeah.
but it's just it's harder to stay engaged for us right now with the NFL stuff. So it's a good time of year to catch up on a podcast that has nothing to do with football. So Dawn, I want to talk about a podcast for a second that has blown my mind. Okay.
Ooh.
So I'm going to say something and you're going to think you might think I'm crazy, but some of our listeners might think I'm crazy saying this, but just hear me out. Okay. Now here's the thing. Mental telepathy is real. And here's the thing, right? There are a number of non-speaking autistic kids who have proven that they have the ability to project thoughts into other people's minds, to communicate with each other over impossible long distances, to read their own parents' minds. And the way in which this is coming to light is kind of like documented throughout this podcast series, which is called the Telepathy Tapes. The woman who's sort of at the head of it, her name is Kai Dickens. And so the first episode, it builds really interesting. Because the first episode is she is interested in this case she heard about, or I shouldn't say case, but a family. I think it's they're either in Mexico or just north of the Mexican border, and the girl in the family, the little girl, is a non-speaking autistic child, but she has been able to communicate because I won't get into the weeds too much because I'll be here all day. But there is this method that non-speaking autistic kids can learn called spelling, where they can start to be able to use a letterboard basically to communicate thoughts, since they can't actually speak. And so through this method that some of these students are starting to learn, they're able to communicate what they're perceiving, and then demonstrating that they are reading people's minds, especially people they're closest to. So it starts with just this one kid who Kai Dickens finds out about, does some tests, some informal tests, because she's not a researcher. She's curious. She's a journalist, and then takes these tests that she did to the woman who actually is a scientist, does have a clinical license and everything, and says is this enough to prove it? She says, no, that wouldn't stand up to scrutiny. And I know because I've tried. Here's somebody who is even easier, more impressive, more able to prove what can really demonstrate it. And that's the second episode. And it kind of builds from there and talks about it goes in it goes in all kinds of crazy directions that I don't want to spoil that, because seeing it unfold is just amazing. But it gets onto it gets beyond just reading people's minds, communicating. It gets into spiritual. It gets into human evolution. It just goes on, and it is amazing.
Wow.
It is amazing. So I think it's 9 episodes, so you can get through it in a week if you binge it like I did, or a couple weeks if you're more reasonable. Again, it's called the Telepathy Tapes. Kai Dickens, we have some funny comments here in the chat, but yeah, I highly recommend it if you want to have your mind blown. This is it's so good.
I want my mind blown so badly right now. I love that. I love that so much. It's funny you said that, because I listen. The whole reason, for those of you who are here and those of you who are listening on Saturday or whenever you listen, so glad you're listening. The reason Matt and I came together, we met each other on Twitter because of the Packers, because we're both Packers fans. But ultimately, I realized that Matt was somebody who really appreciated podcasts and content, NFL and other. And so we consume a lot of podcasts between the two of us, a lot, a crazy amount of stuff. I just love learning things all the time about everything. Yes. So I love this so much, Matt. I've mentioned, probably this will be the 4th time I've mentioned the Tooth and Claw podcast, which actually was brought up by one of our guests. And
yes, John Meerdink. John Meerdink brought it up when he was on the show with us.
Meerdink. Thank you. And he had said, I think he hadn't started listening yet, but I have to write to him. I have to write to him, because one of the things I did because of the slow football season, is
Mhm.
catch up on some of the I'm like, why haven't I heard a Tooth and Claw episode for a while? And I've been just like binging Tooth and Claw, and I've been having so much fun and learning. So it doesn't matter, like, there's so much out there. And if you want to know, obviously, the podcast that Matt's talking about or more about it, contact him or myself. Tooth and Claw is about, basically, it's it's an animal biologist who specializes in bears. His brother, his little brother, and his friend, and it's just super funny. But it's about animal attacks that happen in history and currently. And so, I mean, it doesn't matter. Telepathy, whatever, but telepathy is something I'm really interested in. So I'm so glad you brought this up.
Mhm. Mhm. Love
Um,
it.
yeah. So True North says, I can read the thoughts of Dawn's cat, and Dawn had better watch out. It's so funny, Joe and True North and Matt, because of your comments and because, we're being spied on. I'm getting all this content thrown at me in my play, whatever, fed to me in my feeds in
Mhm.
any social media that I am on, which is a lot, about cats eating their owners. I mean, it's all the time. It's all the time. And I
Dawn is a
find
sign. The higher power is trying to warn you. It's trying to get you ready.
telepathy. And I have kind of just been like, I have come to the conclusion that I'm okay with that. Like, if I pass out on the floor
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
Tosh is hungry and
She's
I'm
gotta
not
eat.
found and she needs
Yeah.
something to eat, you know, save the cremation services. It's okay. Let her eat me if that's what she wants to do.
There you go. She's listening, so.
Yeah, the most recent Tooth and Claw I listened to was about this dude who I didn't know about, who in the early 2000s was, he was like a drug addict and a failed actor in LA, and he decided he was going to live with the bears in Alaska, which is really a great idea, and ended up getting eaten by a bear.
Grizzly
I'm
man,
not
right
laughing.
there.
I'm not laughing. I'm sorry, but it's just funny. It's funny that I even listen to this kind of thing, but I'm like, okay, well, he even said, if I get eaten by a bear, please don't shoot it. It's okay. I love these things. I love these bears. It took 13 years. He made it 13 years with living with these bears, harassing them, basically taking, before social media was a thing. He would have been a big time YouTuber if YouTube
Mhm.
was a thing back then. But yeah, he got eaten. And unfortunately, his girlfriend did as well, which she
Ugh.
wasn't. Yeah. Anyway, it's a thing. It's a thing. So yeah, and Iowa says it's bound to happen. I'm glad these spam emails have finally worked. Oh my God. Well, Matt, okay, let's make it official, Matt. Let's make it an
Mhm.
official. Okay. If
And it-
indeed, if
mhm. Yeah.
indeed it
Yes.
happens that Tosh does eat my remains,
Yes. If it
I
happens.
I want you to clip this and do a show about it.
There we go. I will. I'll make a whole it'll be a whole podcast series about it. Actually, it'll be my
Yes.
next podcast will be about your cat eating you. Yeah, there's content there. That could have wings. Yeah.
Make sure you at Tooth and Claw because they would love it. They would. Tooth and Claw and a wildlife photographer that I follow a lot on social media, who's just a phenomenal photographer. They both have a lot of followers, and they have come to start like doing group um, excursions, right? And so they're doing one. Tooth and Claw is doing Antarctica next year. I am dying to go. I'm not going to be able to. It's too soon, and I can't see it happening. But um, African safaris, Indian safaris, Alaskan safaris for the bears with this photographer that are very
Mhm.
doable. And yeah, so there's a lot of fun content out there and creators who actually even do, like in this case, it's wildlife, but they do outings so you can learn from those photographers or those scientists or whoever you want to learn from. But yeah, that's why I love podcasts, because there's just so much out there.
So much.
But that's a good one. That's a good one. Well, Maddie,
Right.
that's it for me. Any final thoughts before we wrap her up?
I'll just hit 2 comments from the chat and then give a quick final thought before we bring it home. So just real quickly, Joe had asked us here twice in the chat, are we going to the draft? Joe, I'm not. I'm not. It would be fun, but it's just not quick and work for my schedule, unfortunately. I know it'd be like a lot of travel for Dawn, so I'm guessing probably not for you, right, Dawn?
Yeah, I'm still dealing with all of my medical things. So April is not even possible. I'll be lucky, really, if I can get to Wisconsin in the fall for a game and to see my family. I'm hoping for that. But I was just thinking about the draft again. It's like,
it'd be fun, but I know it won't work for my family, so.
Yeah, I don't think I could handle it. And plus, you guys, it's April in Wisconsin, and I would freeze to death. I would freeze. Because April is still kind of like, it could be nice, it could be snowy, and nice for Wisconsin is like probably the coldest day I've ever had out here. Right? I mean, April, what is the weather going to be like in April in Wisconsin during the draft? It's going to be down parka, right?
No, I mean, for somebody who lives in like a constant 65 to 75 degree like weather, zone, that might feel like a parka weather. I think it'll probably be like shorts weather for me, but it just depends on your cold times. I don't think it'll be too bad at all, honestly. But so then another thing I want to mention here that Joe also said that he and True North Packers fan better be guests on the podcast I eventually make about your cat eating you. Of course, you guys will be like frequently, doing voices on the show. Absolutely. So yeah, no, don't worry about that. I got you.
I'm going to put it in my will. This has to happen.
All right, Don. Well, I'll bring it home now. So, sorry. Before I do, real fast. No, I keep thinking now about this analogy of the cake, of the season as being a cake, and so I think my closing thought then would be, folks, just know that like you have the latitude to build your NFL cake the way you want to, however elaborate or simple or whatever. As long as you're enjoying your cake,
just enjoy the cake.
That's what matters. Don't let the haters make you think you got to make your cake differently than you do. Whether they're people who are super obsessed about the draft and you're not, or whether you're super obsessed about it and people are talking about you like you're crazy. Don't let the haters get you down. Build your cake the way you want to. Enjoy the NFL the way you want to.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I like that, Maddie.
Oh well, you're the one who brought the cake, analogy in. So
we're gonna go with it.
Keep it running. So anyhow, friends. We'd love to have a chance to interview you and shout you out if you're a subscriber and a football fan. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a guest on our podcast, please let us know. Our DMs are open on all the social platforms, although we're not really on X right now. Not really. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us to keep spreading the love in our community. And the best way to help this podcast grow is by sharing it with your friends and family.
Yes, Maddie, that's right, because we love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on.
In 2 weeks. Hey, we like your pod.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.